looking forward to our next session where we have the insight from not just one expert, but two industry experts who are going to join us, each with over 20 years experience in their respective fields as well. So we have Adam Wenchel, who is CEO at Arthur, and we have Slawek Kierner, who is Senior Vice President, Enterprise Data and Analytics at Humana. And they're going to talk to us about powering the AI-native enterprises, lessons from Humana and other industry leaders. So invite them both up. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Great to be back. I was, go to the next slide. This is actually a picture, so for starters, it's great just to be around live people, live events again. This is so cool, not being on a Zoom call. But I was up on this stage in 2016, actually, one of the first years of this conference. And it's amazing to reflect, number one, how much bigger this conference has gotten, how much the growth there's been in enterprise AI. And also how the conversation's really changed in the last 5 years. So in 2016, when I was here, most people were just trying to figure out what the heck is AI. This quote from the Wall Street Journal, experts say artificial intelligence systems that could make recommendations. They might be used for medicine or finances someday. And that's in 2016. And of course, now we know they're being, that stuff is just almost like common sense. It's just understood. They're being used all over financial services, healthcare, and in a bunch of other industries. And so, thinking back about how the conversations evolved from those early days, starting in 2016, 2017, it was, what is AI? There was all sorts of, hype in crazy headlines like, the AI is going to take a bunch of jobs. White House says we need more of it, and other things like that, which ended up, obviously has not been an issue. And hiring, people were struggling in 2018. The conversation really started to shift into all right, we know we need to do this stuff. There's very few people who are qualified who know what they're doing. Where do we find these people? How do we train them? How do we create the talent? And that's now something people have underway. There's been a real uptick in the number of people with skills to implement AI. And then the last couple of years, the conversation really was felt like half the talks were about all the reasons AI projects fail, and you had statistic after statistic of 58% of AI projects fail, 72% of AI projects failed. I feel it was a continual headline. And then, more recently, there's been a lot of stories about kind of how it goes wrong. Stories of enterprise AI that didn't work out quite the way they were intended. And so, it's been a real change in the conversation. But the cool thing is this: going into 2022, we're starting to actually see this come together, right? It's actually, AI is out there in the real world, as evidenced by, this is a tweet from a couple days ago, where someone was just remarking how they were walking down the street, they saw a robot, the robot asked them for help, they helped the robot, and then they went about their day. And so AI really has become really pervasive and kind of just a part of the everyday fabrics of our lives. And so in 2022, really what we see is the era of the AI native enterprise. So it's no longer this sort of coming soon phenomena, it's here. And in 2022, we're starting to see major enterprises where big parts of their business are being underpinned by predictive algorithms, by models, algorithmic decision making, and it's very exciting. And it's a little bit, it reminds me a little bit of the William Gibson quote, "The future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed," where what we're seeing is the first handful of large, Global 2000 type enterprises who are really kind of the leaders here are actually starting to get these models deployed in significant numbers and really start to improve their business and the way they help their customers with this. And so we're very fortunate today to have Slawek Kierner with us from Humana. So Slawek has a really unique background, and he not only is he the Chief Data and Analytics Officer for Humana and played a similar role at other places like Nokia, but he also has experience working inside a large tech innovator, working for Microsoft, leading a lot of their Power BI and other analytics tools. And so, really great perspective, and been in the industry for a long time at a very high level. And so he's going to talk to us a little bit about what's made Humana so successful in their AI journey. So Slawek, you will come up to stage and join us.
Thank you.
Thanks, welcome. So wanted to start off, now you all have accomplished so much with AI, but kind of take us back to the beginning a little bit and tell us, where did you get started with, early use cases and wins, hiring, how did you get started with this journey?
Oh, thanks for the question. Let me maybe start from a bit of a background on Humana. So what is the context? Because then the questions and answers will be a bit more relevant. So Humana is a Fortune 42 healthcare company, roughly 100,000 people. We have businesses in a couple of segments. And a large one is a Medicare Advantage segment, which is a very interesting model here in the US, where essentially, government pays for people that we insure, and our business model is to make sure that they stay, as healthy as possible and they live as long as possible. Because the healthier they are, the less they stay in the hospital, and the longer they live, of course, the better the business model for the company. And we believe it's also better for those members of Humana that benefit from, of course, healthier, happier life. Then next to that Medicare Advantage business, we also have traditional healthcare insurance business. We have one of the largest mail-order pharmacies. We also have recently expanded into home care. So we have roughly 50,000 nurses that go and attend people at home and provide care. So this is the context of that enterprise. And additional point is that this generates a lot of data. So as I joined from Microsoft to Humana, one of the, of course, very important factors that attracted me to the company is that there is so much data. And for someone interested in AI, in analytics, that creates a lot of opportunities.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, the use of AI was really just starting. There was a number of course, very talented people, but most of our compute was still on-prem. We were not having access to modern technologies, to GPUs, and that, of course, has changed. So your question was, in that context, what was the starting point? And it always starts with people. So the first thing is, of course, spending time with a team that was operating data at Humana at that moment, as well as a number of my peers, colleagues that are running these various businesses that I talked about. Then second, very quick step that we did was to really understand what platform do we want to have for our data and analytics environment. It was very clear that we had to modernize, move out from just kind of on-prem, set of technologies to use some of the potential that cloud could kind of provide to us. And then finally, it was about choosing some of these important transformational use cases or domains that could provide value to the enterprise relatively quickly.
That's great. And so now, as you guys have kind of matured as a company, can you tell us a little bit about the structures you have in place to kind of help make sure that you're doing it in kind of a well-managed, governed way?
Oh, yeah, totally. So the core of the structure is we run the hub and spoke model. In the hub, we have data governance, analytics, and then data science groups that build horizontal platforms for this operation. And then we have a number of vertical units that essentially host integrators or product managers, AI strategists. There's no common industry name. I think we need to coin one, maybe in a conference like this one. Essentially, people that understand the business process relatively well and can translate what is needed by the customer to data scientists and data engineers to create use cases to deliver value effectively. So that's the core of the organization. This is the team that is there. And then in terms of processes, of course, technology helps a lot. So in each of these areas, we have built a modern technology stack, which has templates and governance processes that ensure that we deliver value as good as possible.
That's great. And you mentioned sort of the importance of kind of collaboration across different groups and having people who can kind of unite those worlds. And I'm curious, one of the things we think about when we see these very successful companies is who needs to come along on that journey, and how you kind of break down those organizational walls, and the importance of involving the CEO and even the board. And how do you all think about that at Humana?
Well, we have great support from the CEO and from our board, and that's essential. And of course, there is a need to fund this transformation, so that's essential from the perspective of having the budget. But probably more important help is really in helping transform the thinking in the company, and ensure that there is enough of help to drive transformation, to drive change management, because most of these AI programs or projects require changes to the workflow and changes to how people think and work, and this is where you need to have CEO and the board supporting you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so one of the things, like when you have that sort of, along with that level of importance and that level of investment and level of scrutiny, there comes you need to sort of demonstrate the value that's coming out of all that effort. So how do you all think about sort of measuring success and reporting out the value to people like the CEO and the board?
Yeah, good question, and it's not simple. Not so,
no, it's not.
But it's very important to do.
Yeah.
So I think about this, frankly, in two domains. On one side, you want to understand value so that you can ensure continued investment and budgets and all of that. But also you need to have metrics as you operate to understand that you are moving at the right speed. And therefore, where we started, frankly, is from measuring usage, and then we moved to measure touch points, and then we moved to actually measuring value. But let me start from the first one. So of course, as we assembled these new platforms in the cloud, we wanted to make sure that as many of our prior users of technologies on-prem are moving to these new platforms as possible, because there we can then observe these effects of network effects, reuse of code, reuse of features, and it was very important for us to retrain our data scientists and also to hire some of the new ones to be able to kind of leverage those new platforms. And then essentially on a daily basis, we are measuring how many people are using those new platforms, and celebrating every time we're kind of passing to another record. And so that was the first one. Then the second thrust of measurement was about member touch points. So I believe that for every company, of course, in every operation, you do need to be customer focused. You need to understand, how AI in the end improves the lives of customers. And we coined this concept and the metric of a member touch point or customer touch point, which is every time where our company, so Humana, touches a member, and that touch is empowered by an AI model that is building our new infrastructure, we essentially count one touch point. So until now, we have almost 17 million touch points that we've done on this new infrastructure over roughly the last 2 years. There's very nice, interesting acceleration of those, and we do 2-3 times more this year than we've done last year, which of course is just showing the kind of quick progress. And in the end, those touch points, we believe that every time we touch a member, when this touch is empowered by augmented intelligence, there is value, because the business operators, the leaders of segments wouldn't allow us to bring a new process if it was worse than what was previously done, of course, by humans. So every time we do it, there is some incremental value that the member and the company in the end gets, because that person is touched with AI. And then, we are right now third year in this transformation. We did get to a moment where we now started to have amazing help from our strategy team and from finance team to start to look into dollars, and also, other important metric for the company. So it's a clinical operation, so we also count, a number of avoided admissions for members. We count, of course, satisfaction of our members. So these metrics start to appear as well, and there's more than $1 billion value in terms of 4-year NPV on the programs that we have right now in the pipeline. So we can start to talk about dollars and also the other metrics as well. But I wouldn't start from there. It's very hard to to start. And the thing that dollars don't give is they don't give ability to count progress on a daily basis. You don't have this kind of understanding of your speed, which I think is also very important as you manage through the transformation.
Yeah, I remember you shared with us once there was sort of an internal leaderboard among the different lines of business about this AI touch points, right? Which helped set up a little friendly competition internally, from what I recall.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, metrics, we use metrics both for friendly competitions, and we also use metrics to log an interesting interplay between the horizontals and verticals. So the horizontals are those that create those new data science platforms, and verticals then integrate the use cases, and then both of them are measured on touch points. So the vertical, the team that has created our amazing machine learning platform is of course motivated to have as many touch points overall for the whole company, and then every vertical is motivated to have as much as possible for their particular segment or business operation. And through this you drive a lot of this internal collaboration where there is aligned incentive for people to help one another.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So one of the core foundational beliefs we have at Arthur is that when you're rolling out these algorithms, that ethics needs to be baked in from the beginning, and I know Humana shares that conviction. And so I'm curious if you could share a little bit about sort of what you've learned, lessons learned, the approach you all have taken on that front.
Yeah, it's of course an amazing opportunity to practice AI in a healthcare company that. And healthcare education of clinicians, and actually majority of Humana employees right now are clinicians. It is very heavily rooted in ethics. So actually one of the first things we've done is we designed our AI principles, which we have on our website, which we of course have are preaching and kind of recalling quite often in our conversations, where it's very clear that whatever we do cannot do any harm to our members. We always try to do better than the kind of previous process, and that also led to us signing an AI pledge to ensure that we follow those principles, and then they are also followed by the partners that we work with, like Arthur, and then we deploy technology again, together with you to understand and monitor our models for unintended bias, for any kind of potentially harmful consequence, and that over the last years helped us ensure that doesn't happen. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. Glad to partner on it. How is Humana? One of the things that we're just hearing, like a real increase in focus, is sort of regulation of AI, and certainly in places like Europe, as well as at the state and local level, we're seeing a lot of it, and increasingly at the federal level. And I know that's something that Humana, being in a traditionally regulated industry, it spends a lot of time thinking about and engaging on. So I'd love if you could share a little bit like how you all are thinking and engaging with regulators and policymakers in the broader community.
Yeah. Good question, and we need more regulation. So it's very clear. And working previously in global businesses like Microsoft, it's very clear that the more kind of aligned this regulation is between the regions, between the countries, between the states, the better for, of course, the progress of technology. So we do engage quite a bit, and a good thing is that there is infrastructure to do this within the company, because to your point, we are heavily regulated, so we do have experts internally that know how to both work and kind of influence the regulation with the government here in the US. One particular effort that recently happened was the business roundtable discussions, where we had both participants from roughly 50 Fortune 100 companies out there, as well as representatives from the White House, from the EU, from the Singapore government, and we developed a set of recommendations for the regulations that we hope the governments will take. And it was a very interesting set of discussions, where I think all governments have shown up with this I think dual purpose. One, of course, they want to represent the needs and the desires of their countries and populations there to create safe environment after AI is in place. But at the same time, all governments also understand that they want to increase the amount of innovation and the way AI is deployed in their countries. It's very clear that it's important for the competitiveness of their economies. It's important for defense industry. It's in the end, of course, also important for healthcare, which is a very large part of GDP in most of the countries. So I hope these recommendations will be written into regulations relatively soon, and that will help us operate.
Great. Yeah, I think there's so much activity. I'm excited to see what transpires in the next couple of years. Last question, and then we'll let you go. I really appreciate you sharing, but would love sort of, we talked at the beginning of this how far the conversation's come since 2016. What, looking forward to the next couple of years, where is this headed? I mean, are we all looking at a future of robotic doctors or other kinds of, flying cars? Where do you think this is headed?
So I don't think we'll have robotic doctors in the next 2 to 5 years. And at some stage in the future, probably yes. But I think in terms of fully AI-driven robotic surgery is probably not there. And augmented robotic surgery, certainly. I mean, you will see more and more digital tools and AI that are helping surgeons do a better job as they do a surgery. We'll have way more tools that take away mundane tasks from nurses and clinicians. You can imagine how much of this kind of administrative stuff is happening right now in healthcare, where doctors, physicians, nurses need to read through thousands of pages of documents to arrive to a diagnosis or approve a procedure. All of this will very quickly become augmented, automated through AI, through natural language processing, and more decisions will be suggested to clinicians to make. But the decision in the end, the diagnosis and the treatment, will still be done with human hands. Second thing that I think will come, and I'm very excited about this, is similarly to a few other industries where processes moved from reactive to proactive, we will hopefully have more and more of this proactive healthcare as well. So rather than reactive mode, which quite often happens right now, where we kind of live our life and we wait for a time when we get a pain in our chest, and then we call ER, and then things start for healthcare experience. We can predict a lot of this way before. And we can also then predict with relatively good confidence what will happen and why, and contact the person proactively with some of our nurses, and then help avoid, in the end, that deterioration of health, prolong life, and avoid hospitalizations and consequences from that standpoint. So this move from reactive to proactive healthcare, I think is really in front of us in the next 2 years for sure.
That's fantastic. Yeah, well, it's great to hear about this sort of stuff where the best interests of everyone are like really well aligned like that. So it's exciting to think about that in the future. So I really appreciate you joining us, Slawek.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Actually, a couple more slides.
I was just going to say, if anybody has any further questions, if they want to, again, step up to the microphone, if anybody has a question either for Slawek.
But we have like a couple wrap-up slides real quickly.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll do questions. Yeah, if we have time, which we will leave a little time for questions. So, Slawek, thank you very much. That was great. It was really, really awesome to hear about that. And working with great partners like Humana and Slawek, we've noticed some real strong themes with the companies that are successful in that. And a lot of these you heard Slawek mention, but just to list them out, we can walk through these real quickly. Number one, these AI native enterprises have been really effective at breaking through organizational walls, getting the alignment from the top, because this does require the involvement of subject matter experts and AI experts and everyone sort of coming together to work together. And without that, you're not going to be successful. Number two, build with what we call front-end ethics. So this isn't front-end development, it's front-end like bake it in from the beginning. If you're not starting with sort of a foundation of ethics, we know in this age, in 2021, 2022, it's no longer good enough just to put something out there, and if it's problematic, apologize later, because that's not what the world expects from people these days. Number 3, use governance as an accelerant. So we find that the companies that aren't doing AI well, governance tends to be this slog, and it slows them down, and they don't get things into production for 12 plus months. Whereas the companies that are really good at AI, they view governance as a real accelerant, where they have like really well-designed process and guardrails in place, so that they can move faster and deploy things, knowing that they're not going to make mistakes. Measure what matters. You heard Slawek talk about this a lot, like really understanding, important model metrics like accuracy and data drift and things like that, but tying that all the way to the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And then finally, number 5, realize that getting the model into production is only the starting point. Once it's out in the world and impacting people, there's quite a lot that needs to be done to make it better and to continue to improve and build off that. So those 5 themes, at the end of the day, everyone in this room is an architect of this business era, which is the AI business era, and really kind of setting in motion what's the things that are going to transform a number of industries over the next decades to come. And so really appreciate everyone coming out, and I think we do have time for a couple questions if anyone wants to ask. And Slawek, maybe you want to rejoin for the questions, that would be great.
Absolutely, there is time for questions now. So yes, if anybody does have any questions that they want to ask, if you want to just come across to the microphone and put to either Slawek or Adam. Thank you.
I think I saw one raised hand.
Thank you. Interesting presentation. You talked about return, how to convince a CEO. What's the timeline of AI impact, right? So how long do you have to believe before you actually see real measurable impact?
You want to go ahead if you were.
Well, of course, it depends on a use case, right? I think you probably shouldn't expect anything in less than a year. In our case, I think small use cases started to generate monetary impact within probably that time frame. It took us roughly half a year to build a new platform, and then we started moving models from the old to the new one. You clearly saw increasing precision, and that could often be translated into monetary impact. But when you think about like organizational transformation, really getting a company to be AI kind of driven, I think that is a 3-year horizon. We start seeing some of this right now. This is the moment where we start seeing like $1 billion plus, 4-year NPV impact, which is relevant from like the enterprise operation perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Follow-up question, but I don't want to steal anybody. All right, so change management is a big theme for big companies. AI is a big thing. How do you overcome okay, this is going to take my job? I mean, some AI project will reflect into job losses and the transformation of the company. How did you navigate that?
Very good question. And I think what we did at the very beginning is we deployed a lot of learning. So reverse mentoring for executives and kind of 1-2 levels down. More than 8,000 training opportunities have been completed by various people across the enterprise. And we are not done. By all means, there's still a lot, and so we are coming back with another wave. And we do find those moments of like friction in a number of places. But what I notice is actually the more you deploy AI, there is actually quite a bit of job creation in this whole data ecosystem. Like we noticed that we don't have enough data stewards. We need way more data stewards, and we need more people that actually even do things like BI reporting, analytics. There's more data, there's more demand for this. You can train that relatively easily, and we started doing. We have actually 2 very successful waves of pulling people from other job profiles, very diverse community, by the way, and then creating a program where we train them in data stewardship, in analytics, in AI, and then we bring them back into the segments. So previously you might have been operating in a call center, doing call center work. Right now some of this may be supported by AI, so there's less of need for your previous type of work, but maybe you can become a data steward of data that is generated during that call center conversation. So it's what's going on right now.
Yeah, I'll just add, we work with a broad cross-section of customers in many different industries, and collectively have deployed many thousands of models into production and empowering plenty of systems. And we have not seen a single instance of like, oh, we have this model in production, now we can lay people off. And it's not even been a conversation internally. It's because, people are so
Part of the ROI calculation up front?
No, not generally, because it's about making people more efficient in most cases and allowing them to do higher value work and kind of removing some of the tedium. And so it's been great from that perspective. And on the change management front, that is something that, it's a very real phenomena that happens. I remember when I was leading Capital One's AI team, we started to develop some of these models, a lot of the early reaction was, oh, that's cool, but the regulators will never allow it. The regulators will never allow it. I heard that like multiple times. And at some point I was like, I need to talk to these regulators. Are they really that unreasonable? And ended up sitting down with them. And of course, they were very reasonable people, and they knew that this sort of change was coming, and they were prepared for it. And I think a lot of that was sort of people just had to get their heads around it and understand what it meant and demystify like some of the hype and really talk in pragmatic steps. And we were able to kind of work our way past that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. We'll be available in the booth later today if anyone wants to come by and ask questions. So thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you to both for that insight.